enthusiasms of the United States. Those things have given the U.S. a real force multiplier. And then he spells it out. It comes from Cold War investments in high technology, electronics, aviation, telecommunications, and so on. That's our free market enthusiasms and democracy. Well, where did electronics and aviation and telecommunications come from? Well, from public funds. They didn't have anything to do with the free market. They came from public funds, which were transferred to high technology industry under the conscious guise, deceit of security, and it was conscious. So Truman's first Secretary of the Air Force, back in 1948, pointed out to Congress that the word to use is not subsidy. The word to use is security. And in fact, the whole system was designed that way and stays that way. So that's the tribute to democracy and the free markets. Tribute to democracy and free markets is you rob the public by deceit to enrich the rich. That's free markets and democracy. And it's published without comment. Another article and probably nobody notices, because the concept of capitalism, just like the concept of democracy, is just gone. Nobody knows what it is. Democracy means deceive people into doing what the rich people want, and markets means make sure the public subsidize the rich. Or to take another example, take say the Wall Street Journal, which you'd think would be the last holdout where somebody remembers what capitalism is. Well, they had a front lead article a couple of weeks ago on various strategies that states, meaning like states of the Union, were using to try to be more business friendly. And they picked two examples, Virginia and Maryland, who are sort of competing and to see who can most sponsor entrepreneurial values and be most business friendly and so on. And they said, well, for a while it looked like they have somewhat different strategies. That's why they were describing them. Turned that for a while Maryland was doing better, then it turned out Virginia's doing better. Now Virginia's doing better. They're more business friendly, more gung-ho about business and so on. All right, you read the article. Turns out it's not Virginia and Maryland. What it is the suburbs of Washington, some of which are in Virginia and the others of which are in Maryland. And what are the two business strategies, entrepreneurial strategies? Well, the suburbs of Washington figured they could rip off the National Institute of Health and others develop biology-based industries. They were looking for biotechnology and so on. They figured that's going to be the big cash cow. And Virginia, which is more business-friendly, decided that the old cash cow, the Pentagon, would probably be the best way to rip off public funds. So they were concentrating on electronics and telecommunications and so on. And it turned out that Virginia had the better strategy, the better business strategy. They made a better guess about which public funds to rob. And that's what it means to have entrepreneurial values. And it's, again, reported without comment. This just continues virtually without a break. The New York, I'll give you one last example. The New Yorker had a rather good article, actually. By now the story about what's happening to the economy and to the population, which used to be what crazies on the left talked about, it's now sort of hit the public. So you read it in the newspapers. New Yorker had an article in which they reviewed the figures on decline of real wages and increase in profits, and the story you're familiar with. By a guy named Thomas Cassidy. It wasn't a bad article, actually, sort of reviewed the familiar facts. And then he ended up by saying, look, no one's to blame for this. It's just the market in its infinite and mysterious wisdom just has these effects, and there's nothing you can do about it. And they gave three examples, exactly three examples in the article of the market in its infinite and mysterious wisdom, namely Grumman, McDonnell Douglas, and Hughes Aircraft. Maybe this is some kind of subtle irony that I'm missing, but these are three prototypes of publicly subsidized corporations. Grumman, Hughes, McDonnell Douglas, they wouldn't exist for 2 minutes if it wasn't for a huge public subsidy. So that's the market and its infinite and mysterious wisdom. When Clinton was announcing his grand vision of the free market future at the APEC conference in Seattle, he did the same thing. It was in the Boeing terminal. That's where he announced it. And he gave Boeing as the example of the grand vision of the free market future, and there are big headlines in all the newspapers, and a lot of applause about our love of the free market and so on. It's unnecessary to comment. But it is kind of interesting. What it means is that the concept of capitalism and markets has disappeared as fully as the concept of democracy, which is an interesting fact about the modern period. and a kind of a natural effect of, of applying the Washington Consensus at home, because you really have to drive out any understanding of what's going on, namely that it's really existing free markets that are being imposed. Well, all of these current measures share one fundamental principle, and I think it's really at the heart of it. Two related fundamental principles. One is they transfer wealth to the wealthy, and the second is they transfer decision-making power to the wealthy. So all of them have the effect, just think it through, every one of them has the effect of putting more power to make decisions into the hands of unaccountable private tyrannies, what we call corporations, basically totalitarian institutions, but they're mostly unaccountable. That's the effect. You think through the examples. Every case of the Washington Consensus applied at home has exactly this effect. And a good part of the propaganda system has the same goal, in this case, surely conscious. So the propaganda system is designed, has been for years, to demonize unions, which makes a lot of sense. Unions are a democratizing force in which the mass, one of the few ways in which the large mass of the population can pool limited resources and work together for some common good. So that's that bad thing, democracy. So naturally you want to demonize and destroy unions, and that's been going on forever. And the other leading propaganda theme, and I don't mean by that, just what you hear in the newspaper, reading the newspaper and so on, like the entertainment industry and television and everything else, is anti-politics, meaning setting up a picture. It's called anti-politics. The picture is a very specific kind of anti-politics. You have to establish the image, get into people's heads that the government is the enemy, federal government. State governments are okay because they can be sort of controlled by business anyway, so it doesn't matter. But the federal government's sometimes a little too big to be pushed around, so it's the enemy, and it cannot be. Nobody can dream of the possibility that the government is of, by, and for the people. That's impossible. It's an enemy to be hated and feared. Not that there aren't a lot of things wrong with it, but that's not, what's wrong with it, from their point of view, is it has a big defect. It's potentially influenceable by the population and big enough to stand up against private power, and that's the defect. So you have to regard it as the enemy. It cannot be of, by, and for the people. It's a kind of a them versus us business. Them is the government, which is the enemy. Us is all of us nice people, sober working man, loyal wife, maybe extra job these days, the hard-working executive toiling 20 hours a day, for the benefit of all, the friendly banker who's out there trying to find, give you money. That's us, And then there's them. Them is the outsiders, the un-Americans, the agitators, union organizers, big government, and so on. And sort of us versus them. That's the picture. That has been rammed into people's heads for at least 50 or 60 years by intensive propaganda everywhere. Movies, television, textbooks, just constant. And not by accident. This part is all extremely conscious. We have a huge public relations industry which spends billions of dollars a year on exactly this sort of thing, and consciously they even tell you about it. Well, why is it happening now, not say 30 years ago? One proposal is it's the market and its mysterious wisdom. We can put that aside. This is perfectly conscious social policy and also hence under social control. Second is we live in lean and mean times. We got to tighten our belts. Complete nonsense. I mean, all I have to do is look at the business press. They're just ecstatic, and have been for years. Business Week just came out a couple of days ago with the annual issue on the top 1,000 corporations. The headline is 1995 was one for the books. America's most valuable companies grew even more valuable by a record 35%. That's these lean and mean times we're in. Another headline in Business Week reads, "The problem now, what to do with all that cash," as the coffers of corporate America are overflowing with surging profits. Another one talks about the government, really great government. It says, "The Gingrich Congress represents a milestone for business. Never before have so many goodies been showered so enthusiastically on America's entrepreneurs. The headline of that one, incidentally, is "Return to the Trenches." You know, like we got to ask more. Feeding frenzy has to go on from the nanny state. Fortune magazine, you know, the other big business journal, I mean, they can't even find the adjectives in the last couple of years to describe what's going on. One year it's dazzling, you know, the next year stupendous. I mean, I'm waiting for the Fortune 500 issue, see what adjectives they come out with next week. What they've been double-digit profit growth for unheralded 4 years with pretty stagnant sales and fortunately wages going down. CEO salaries are going through the roof, and it's uncorrelated with performance. It's another interesting aspect of it. There have been now studies of it.